Culture is said to be one of the most influential forces on human behavior. It's an abstract concept that is always changing and can be influenced by a number of factors. So how is it defined, and what role does it play in our everyday lives? Joining me now to answer those questions is the author of For the Culture, The Power Behind What We Buy, What We Do, and Who We Want to Be, Dr. Marcus Collins. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Well, we're so happy to have you, and I'm fascinated, even the title of your book. When you hear For the Culture, depending on what culture you subscribe to, that has a lot of meaning. Others, it might not. So how do you define culture?
So I think about culture through a sociological lens. That's where most of my literature repertoire sits. By a gentleman by the name of Emil Durkheim, one of the founding fathers of sociology. And he says that culture is a system of conventions and expectations that demarcate who we are and what people like us do. So to your point, when you hear the words for the culture, if you are of the hip hop culture, you go, oh, that's Jay-Z, Izzo. But if not, you go, okay, right? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And that's the powerful part about culture, is that culture is the meaning-making system. It's the way by which we see the world and translate it. For instance, for some, a cow is leather. For others, it's a deity. And for some, it's dinner. Which one is it? It's all of them, based upon your cultural subscription.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a biracial woman, what you just said, you can subscribe to many cultures.
That's
you
right.
can be a part of a culture. Other people may place you into a culture you might not necessarily identify with. So what are we to make of all that?
Well, I think that culture is subscribed, not ascribed. That is, we decide, based on our identity, who we are, how we see the world, and then how we behave in the world, right? Because of my identity, I hold a set of beliefs and ideologies. For instance, I'm a Collins, Marcus Collins is my name. We believe the family and church come first. Therefore, Sunday mornings, I'm in the church sanctuary. Otherwise, I get a passive-aggressive call from my mother, right?
Sure.
So because of who I am, by my identity, I behave a certain way. And because I behave a certain way, I tend to express myself through certain cultural product. Television, radio, music, literature, film, art, and brands and branded products. These become ways by which I communicate to the world who I am because of how I self-identify. So while people may put you in a box based on your racial makeup, your race does not dictate your culture.
Sure.
Because there's people who look like me who aren't from the places I am, nor do they see the world the way I do.
Yeah.
Right? It's really about our identity and the beliefs and ideologies that we hold.
Now, what is the difference between what we would typically say is the culture that your parents pass on to you? You're born into a home, and you're raised where you're raised. You get what you get.
That's right. That's right. So there are affixed or ascribed cultures and subscribed. Based on the family in which you were born, in which you were raised, you were ascribed that. You don't have a choice.
Right.
The subscribed cultures are the ones by which I decide with my own volition what I want to be a part of, what school I want to go to, what fraternity I want to be a part of, what religion I choose to be. When you don't have much agency as a child, where you're being reared and raised, you therefore abide by the culture that's given to you. But once you become a certain age, you decide, do I want to hang out with these people or not?
Right.
We think about Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, I teach at the University of Michigan, so there are a lot of students that go home for Thanksgiving. They're like, I got to get out of here as fast as possible. Why? Because the way I see the world isn't reflected in the way that my family sees the world.
Right.
I have an uncle who sees the world this way, and we do not agree. So we don't talk about religion, money, or politics, because they reveal our identity, or they reveal how we see the world. So while we may ascribe to a culture because our last name is that, and that's how we've been raised, we subscribe to the people that are most like ourselves, and therefore we behave accordingly.
And haven't we seen more of that in recent years as the U.S., the world has become more polarized? You hear more and more stories, anecdotes about people who don't necessarily subscribe to the same culture that their immediate family does.
That's right. I mean, this is sort of the crosshairs of the culture wars that we're in, right? My family sees the world this way. I do not. I love them, but we just don't get along. We just can't talk about certain things. They become divisive because to have an in-group, there must be an out-group. Right? And because we see the world a certain way, we therefore behave in the world a certain way. And when the people who we love dearly don't subscribe to the same culture we do, it creates tons of tension.
Yeah. So your book takes it further than just understanding what culture is. You say it can be used as a sort of tool. And how is that?
Exactly. So the book first starts with the argument that there's no external force more influential in human behavior than culture, full stop. But we have to understand what culture is and what are the mechanisms that govern culture. So I provide some language, a Rosetta Stone by which we can describe culture. And then to your point, how do we harness and leverage its power? Right? If we understand people's beliefs, their artifacts, their behaviors, their language, this become ways by which we can describe them accurately, not the boxes that we put them in known as demographics.
Yeah.
And we use demographics all the time, right? Age, race, gender, household income. While there are easy ways to describe people, they're not accurate. For instance, I write about this in the book, Meet Deborah. Deborah drives a minivan. Does Deborah have kids?
I'm assuming so.
Yeah, do her kids play a sport?
Probably.
Right. And
Might
what
be
sport?
soccer?
Yeah, exactly. Where does Deborah live?
In the suburbs.
Exactly. I give you one data point about
We
Deborah.
didn't plan that.
And you map out her entire life.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because we have a box for Deborah. And because we use that box for Deborah, we affix a label to her that's not accurate. But if we understand people with great intimacy through their cultural subscription, I get a better understanding of who they are and what they're likely to do. So as a marketer, leader, advertiser, politician, activist, I can leverage the sway of culture through the things I put in the world, products, messages, and the like, the stories that I tell to get people to adopt behavior.
Do you think this is the pathway to, I don't know if we can bring everyone back together again, but is this the pathway out of the extreme polarization that I think everyone's tired of?
Well, I don't know if it's the pathway out of it, but I think that if we look at people not based on these boxes that aren't real, but by the real characteristics that govern who they are, their cultural subscription, then we start to realize that our truth is not the absolute truth, that the world we live in is not objective, it's subjective, right? For some, a cow is leather, for others, a deity, for some, it's dinner. And if we see that the world is subjective in nature, then we can stop and say, oh, well, my truth isn't the only truth. Your truth is also valid.
All these things can be true.
So long as your truth doesn't mean my oppression, all good.
Right.
And that hopefully should start to melt away sort of the polarity that we sit in. However, it also brings us closer to people who are like ourselves.
Yeah. All right, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming by today. Your book just came out about a month ago, yes?
Exactly.
All right, and where can we find that book?
Where all books are sold, the Amazons,
Yes.
the Barnes and Nobles, the Targets, the local mom and pops, everywhere books are sold.
I appreciate what you're doing. Dr. Marcus Collins, thanks so much for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you so much for having me.
Appreciate it.